Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Is my mic coming in all right? Nice to see everybody. It is Tuesday morning, 10:30 a.m. I did move this stream up 30 minutes. Hopefully that was okay with everybody. I do see people coming into chat. Got 13 over on YouTube and another 14 on Twitch. Thanks for hanging out today. We're going to talk a little bit about the Kraken today. Let's see, who do we got in chat today? Zero, Focus, Feathers, Red Samurai, 90, Sean Solo, Dex, Ash, Frostwire, Northern, Sotonic, Giuseppe, and Offset. How's everybody doing in chat? Eagle, I see you, oh 07. Nice to see everybody. Appreciate the massive support on the last stream. What was that? The new IAE ship leaks stream. It was kind of the first of our upcoming IAE discussions surrounding new ships. Obviously, there were, a little bit of, little bits of, info that kind of percolated out of the latest Evo build. I'm sure that will continue over the course of the next few weeks as we get closer and closer to IAE. Cody Fox, Wastelanders, 07, salute to you. So, we're going to continue to kind of get more drips and drops related to the new ships, which, we will cover here on Shipyard. Unlike CitizenCon, IAE is generally focused on ships, where CitizenCon had some more like future gameplay, future locations, future systems and stuff. IAE is much more focused on the ship. So you're probably going to see a lot more Shipyard episodes through November. Okay, probably a lot more Shipyard episodes through November. SimSoda Gaming says, Graham, with the Perseus being at IAE, what do you think the main star will be at Invictus launch week 2026? I think it'll be the Ironclad. The Ironclad will be, and the Ironclad Assault, I think, will be the big ships for Invictus launch week. I think there'll be some interesting combat ships that will be at ILW, the actual Invictus event. There will be some interesting combat ships there, but I don't think they're going to be like the stars of the show. What I think we're going to see is we're going to see Defense Con put up a big challenge to the Invictus festivities this year through DefenseCon and Drake and possibly other manufacturers coming into DefenseCon. So I think we're going to see a much bigger DefenseCon presence next year, and the big stars of the show will be the Ironclad and the Ironclad Assault. Two pretty large ships, actually, and from what I've seen in the community, there's actually a lot of buzz around the Ironclad, so I think that'll be a big star. Hey, StarJump Starlet is in chat. Everyone give Starlet an 07. Appreciate that. Juarez reached a 3-stream streak. That is hard to say. Juarez, thanks for joining us today. Giuseppe says, question, do you think we will see either the Arastra or Orion, or at least hear of progress on them during the next year, given the shift in focus to industrial ships with Nyx? Well, to be quite honest with you, I haven't seen the shift to industrial ships yet. I think we all assume there will be an industrial shift with the gameplay coming in Nyx. But at CitizenCon, we got all combat. At IAE, we're about to get another big combat ship in the Perseus. We have those fleet tactical operation things coming to Nyx, those big instance things, which we're going to have a stream on soon with a guest. So I haven't seen the big shift to industrial ships that you're referring to yet. I hope it comes. I do hope it comes. I don't think we'll hear anything about the Orion. Like Colin says, I think the Orion's probably a post 1.0 ship. I think they may have even said that, although plans can change. The Arastra, I do think, will come before 1.0. And it's possible we could hear more about it as soon as maybe even IAE. Because here's the thing, during IAE, they're going to do a series of ship-related shows. Last year, I think they did 3 episodes or 4 episodes that were ship-related, like short kind of vignettes where John Crew or Ben Curtis or someone talks. So, got some questions coming in. I'll try to hit some of those. Obviously, we do have a main topic today, but I'll hit some questions here at the beginning. Space Pumpkin Dave says, question, how far along is the Javelin, and is it likely CIG may do a surprise release at next year's Invictus? I think it's very possible. Part of me says that they will save the Javelin for Squadron 42's launch because it's just a big showstopper ship that they can advertise along with the release of Squadron. I think the Javelin is very, very, very far along. I think there's probably a little bit of remaining work to do, and it's probably focused on the modular rooms. But the bulk of the Javelin has been finished for many years. We do know that there was an exterior revamp. Same with the Egress for Squadron 42. We haven't had those come to the PU yet, but I think we will get them in the PU. It'll just be along with Squadron. By the way, everyone, got 67 over on YouTube and another 34 on Twitch. Appreciate you all coming to hang out today. Let's see, what else do we have here? But yes, I think it's possible they could do a surprise release at Invictus next year. What I'm maybe more expecting is I could see them surprising everyone with the battle cruiser going on concept sale at Invictus next year. And then that will be Invictus, but the Defense Con will be like the big flight ready ship thing, you know, with the ironclads. So that's kind of what I think will happen. I heard some rumors that the battle cruiser would be somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000. Despite what it is, you know, that's going to be out of reach for a lot of players. So even if they do push that out, that concept out at Invictus, which I have no indication of, I'm just speculating. If they did push that out, then for sure they would need some big showstopper that is flight ready. And again, I think that'll be the ironclads. Based off where the feature work for command module functionality and just knowing where the ironclad is in development, it makes a lot of sense that it would be ready for, what do you call it? DefenseCon, Invictus next week, or Invictus next year. I can't talk. So yeah. Mark Flat says, question, will there be a reconnaissance ship in the future similar to the Terrapin? Yeah. There's, I mean, in many ways, you're just talking about scanning ultimately. And we have the Mercury Star Runner, we have the Herald. I think there's even a Vanguard that has advanced scanning capabilities. We have the Cutter Scout. Yeah, there's definitely ships that play into the scanning gameplay, and those are going to be those reconnaissance ships for sure. Space Pumpkin Dave says, question regarding the Kraken, which gives you more for your dollar, the Kraken Privateer or the BMM? Well, ultimately, and we're going to go into the Privateer here shortly. Center 55, nice to see you. Thanks for dropping by today. We'll go into, hey, Ryan Matt Gamer, hope you're doing well. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Hope everything is good with you. Yeah, it's subjective, right? What gives you the most bang for your buck when it comes to the merchantman or the privateer? We don't really have a good understanding of what those flight ready costs are going to be for either one of those ships. Right now, it would seem that the Pioneer gives you the best, the merchantman, gives you the best bang for buck based off its current pledge price and what it's going to bring to the table. We also know that it's probably maybe going into production late next year. That seems to be the most bang for the buck now. But here's the thing. The merchantman will go up in price significantly. It is a capital ship at 239 meters currently. That may get revised when it gets reconcepted. It is a full-on capital ship with multiple thousands of SCU of cargo, that it's able to carry. So that is going to go up quite a bit for sure. That price, I mean, the merchantman, for all we know, could end up being $1,500 when it goes flight ready eventually. As a matter of fact, it would not shock me if that's the case. The privateer, on the other hand, obviously much more expensive. I think the privateer currently is $1,900. Chat, feel free to correct me on that. But, you know, the privateer does offer an additional 2 stores. The stores do eat into the cargo capabilities of the Kraken privateer, which is problematic for its viability or its, you know, in sort of a pros and cons compared to the merchantman. One thing I would say that the Krakens really do have over the merchantman that to me is a big plus is again the ability for ships to land on their deck. So you could open your stores in orbit, right? Galloway says, Wiki says 2K standalone for the privateer. Yeah, it's an expensive ship. It's a very expensive ship. You know, another 1,000 and you're all the way up to Javelin prices now. The real question comes, is the privateer and the Kraken going to go up in price when they go flight ready? For the Kraken, for sure, it's going to go up a couple $100, I think. The privateer, I think, will go up about 100 or so. So it's a little subjective. It depends on what you want out of the ship. They both have pros and cons over each other. But currently, I think the merchantman has a little bit of the price advantage, you know, the price to value advantage. Martin says, question, what's your speculation on what a reconcepted Nautilus might look like? Also, where can I find the Nautilus concept interior video you showed on stream a while back? Well, I think it's been mostly pulled. I do have a version of that. I could share on the Discord. I could do that later today on the Discord. That shows the interior concept mesh of the Nautilus. I personally don't think the Nautilus is going to get quite as big a rework as a lot of people think. I do think these Chinese bar citizen, I think John Crew's words were a little taken out of context. He even said that. They're just waiting on mine laying gameplay to come in, and then the ship is going to get a few updates. But I think it's going to mostly be the ship you all know and love, right? It'll mostly be the Nautilus as we see it now. Class Ward says, question, how do you think CIG may make a carrier flight deck expanded hangar module for the Endeavor, just so MISC has a competitor to the Kraken? Well, it'd be pretty easy. I think they could just literally build modules that have flat decks on top and an airlock from the deck to get interior of the ship, where you can walk along the main superstructure. So I don't think it'd be challenging. I think it would just be a different type of module. Yeah. Michael Wheeler says, how would you factor in BMM concept versus Kraken when considered bang for buck? I mean, I think right now all we can do is look at it for what it is, right? So one of those ships has to be landed. I think it has 8 stores. One of them, the Kraken privateer, has the ability to be in orbit and still operate as a store. It has 10 stores. The BMM will be able to mostly retain its cargo capacity over the Kraken's cargo capacity, which gets eaten into by the store. So again, it's just plus and minuses. Cody Fox says, do you think we'll end up expanding the cargo capacity of the privateer? I feel like the amount they've indicated thus far seems artificially low and there's wasted space in the Kraken. Well, it's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the SCU carry capacity of the Kraken, and how CIG can maybe get a little bit more out of the ship as they start to sort of look at it again and sort of reconcept certain areas. One thing I do want to point out though real quick here, though, and I know there's been a lot of people on Spectrum and on Reddit and other places saying, oh, what's the Kraken going to look like after the reconcept? It's going to change. I don't want it to change. I like my big aircraft carrier. I 100% think the Kraken is going to mostly look like what it looks like now. Probably 95% of the Kraken's visual appearance now is what you're going to see, in the future. So I personally wouldn't worry about any of that. I think, honestly, let me get back to my stream manager. I think what CIG is going to ultimately do with the Kraken is look at ways to extend its armament. I think it's going to look at ways to move cargo through the ship better. Okay, that's another thing we're going to touch on. I think they're also going to look at how many ingress and egress points of the ship there are. From an interior perspective, I think they're going to look at things like medical bay, armory, brig. Those are 3 rooms in particular that are not outlined in the original concept cross section, right? So I think those are all areas that CIG is going to look at. Let's go over to the original Kraken sale page. We're just going to take a quick pass by this. For those of you that don't know, I have a Kraken video out, a Shipyard video for the Kraken. It's an old video, but it's one of my better ones in terms of performance. I will put that in the show chat here. Try to watch it in due course of time. But I think, you know, if you don't know much about the Kraken, all you have to do is watch that video and you will get educated quite quickly. I honestly still think it's one of the best Kraken videos out there. So we're going to reference some stuff there, but going back to the original concept, the whole idea of, you know, surrounding the Kraken is to sort of give players, in many ways, before CIG planned on putting space stations in the game, the Kraken was supposed to sort of be your mobile space station, right? It's supposed to be the org level kind of space station, was even talked about as such. They refer to it as a flying fortress and all this kind of stuff. The idea behind it, though, was to be a light attack carrier. Obviously, capital ship. It is 270 meters long. For those of you curious if it does fit in an extra large hangar or a capital size hangar, it does, just barely, but it does. So no issues in getting it in a hangar. It is the largest capital ship that can land that is currently planned for the game. Not to say CIG won't change that, but currently it is the largest capital that can land on a planetary surface or in a hangar or something. Anything over that, Orion, Hull D, Hull E, Javelin, all have to dock. The Hull D and E may be able to land planet side, but not fully extended, not with the cargo laden and fully extended. Okay. Pioneer and Egress both can land planet side, obviously, but are smaller than the Kraken from a length perspective. Okay. The ship comes with a host of features, obviously. Again, this is no surprise to any of you Kraken fans out there. Go for Willie says, what's the best way to send you a screenshot, have an epic moment? If you can get me on Discord, you can DM it to me. You may have to send me a friend request on Discord, StarJump_Grim. But the Kraken has 2 internal hangars, 6 external landing pads, 2 medium and 4 extra small. It has a host of manned turrets. I do think CIG is going to change some of those to remote turrets, though. We'll get into that a little bit more here in a minute. It has a pretty expansive bridge. It has a Dragonfly bay. It has a large cargo area. Kilo 7 Actual, thank you for that follow. I appreciate you. And again, the ship is built around carrying other ships. That's what it does. That's the whole point behind it. Now, the game has changed a lot since 2018, when the Kraken was concepted, right? I think we can all agree it's changed quite a bit. And we obviously don't have as many systems that are planned for 1.0. We only have 5 systems planned for 1.0. Going by what has occurred in Pyro's development, Pyro got built out way more than I think a lot of us were thinking. And that may have been CIG's original intent since the beginning, but Pyro got massively reworked, where there was a ton of rest stations, a ton of refuel and rearm and repair locations. Originally, I think for Pyro, it was only planned to have Ruin Station, if I'm not mistaken. So when you factor in things like space stations that can repair, rearm, refuel, all that stuff, you start to get in this place where you say, well, what does a carrier ship bring? Like, what is the purpose behind it, right? And for me, instead of the primary role of a carrier being centered around carrying ships, they really need to be looked at ships of convenience, right? They're ships to make operations that you're currently involved in easier or more accessible or more convenient, right? Not necessarily just to get a small ship from point A to point B. Okay, because I don't think that's going to be really an issue anymore. Now, there is some convenience by putting all your ships on a carrier and having the carrier go that distance and not stop and do those refuelings. But ultimately, I think that the Kraken is now a full-on support ship, right? So its job should be able to obviously carry ships, but be a way station for ships to onload and offload cargo. So cargo transfer, I think, is going to play a pretty big role in the Kraken's future. Okay, cargo transfer, which kind of goes back to the cargo carry capacity and stuff like that. We're gonna get into that. So cargo carrying capabilities, and then the ability to repair and rearm and refuel. Okay, obviously going to be a big deal. If you take a look at ships like the Starfarer, great ship. I do like that ship, but I worry that the future for the Starfarer is almost too limited by its niche role of only refueling, right? I think CIG personally may need to go back and reconfigure the Starfarer to do siphoning so that it can refuel ships, but also do one part of salvage, which is siphoning. We don't have siphoning yet, but siphoning will be part of salvage in the future. So so by doing that, the Starfarer could plug into 2 gameplay loops, because I think in the future, when a ship needs to refuel, it's not going to just want to refuel. It's going to want to refuel, it's going to want to repair, and it's going to want to rearm. It's going to want to do all 3 of those services. And that's where ships like the Kraken are going to shine. Okay, that's where they're going to really shine. So again, currently has a listed max crew of 10. That's pretty out of date when you consider engineering needs, the amount of turrets this thing has, and other things. GearCon, hello, hope you're doing well. Yes, Ryan. Yeah, it's got to suck up all those abandoned ship gas tanks and just nebulas and space. You know what I mean? It's got to. The Starfarer is too limited in just being able to refuel, right? Cargo capacity of the base Kraken is 3,792. Just to give everyone a little bit of an understanding, that is very close. Not very close. It's close to the Hull C. Okay, Hull C can carry 4,608. And while that it is less, it's the Kraken carries about 800 or so SCU less than the Hull C, but it's a lot of cargo, right? So a lot of cargo capabilities. Length is 270 meters. I've had a lot of people tell me, Graham, do I think the Kraken is going to grow? It's going to grow. It's out of metric, all this stuff. I obviously can't tell you if it's going to grow or not, but what I can tell you is that I have asked Gavin Rothery if the Kraken was built to metric. Okay, Gavin Rothery, designer of the Kraken. I asked Gavin directly, was the Kraken built to metric? Meaning, does it need to grow? And Wolver, thank you for the subscribe on YouTube. I really appreciate that. The message from Gavin was no. It does not need to technically grow. It was built to metric, and actually has quite a bit of space in the ship that is not used right now. Now, there is a difference between having a lot of space and the ship still able to be used, and the ship having the right internal layout for certain types of spaces, right? So 2 very different things. One of the things I heard from someone recently, I won't say any names in case it was a more private conversation, but I do know someone that spoke with a ship developer who is directly working on the Kraken. I just talked to them recently, and one of the things they said was that there is a space concern or a space challenge, you know, in terms of the amount of internal space inside the Kraken right now. That they're trying to figure out flow for. And here's the thing, it's not that the Kraken doesn't have a lot of space to use, it's about having the right type of space to be utilized for the right type of rooms. And I think that's what CIG is currently kind of hammering out and figuring out. Hey, Nick at Night's in chat. Nick at Night, I hope you're doing well. Nick says, given the changes they're making on big ships and atmosphere, does the Dragonfly Bay even make sense? Yeah, I personally don't think it does. However, I think there's sort of a missing equation here. If you remember back a bit, I can't remember when it was, I had sort of done up a what I think a sort of snub ship by Drake would be. So something even smaller than a cutter. Cutter's a little bigger than people think, but something even smaller than a cutter, no interior, just a little snub ship. I think we need to get something new like that properly mates with the Kraken. But we're going to get into some of that here in just a second. Again, ship 64 meters long, 104 meters wide, 270 meters long, obviously a very, very big ship. Okay. Now, real quick, I want to go to the cross section. We're going to focus primarily on the Kraken today, everybody. There will be some privateer talk, but primarily going to talk about the Kraken. I'm still a little unsure if CIG is going to tackle the privateer right away. So looking at the cross section, starting from the nose of the ship, we have the big dual size 8 man turret. We are going to talk a little bit about this turret here because I think this turret is a little bit special and there may be some consideration CIG is giving that for the Kraken's eventual release, and we'll go into that. It's got a top and bottom man turret here. I believe these are dual size 6s, if I'm not mistaken. Again, watch my Kraken video, Shipyard video, if you want to get the full details. We're not going to focus too much on those specific specs at the moment. Ryan, those 64 meters is the height. The ship is 64 meters high, 104 meters wide, but 270 meters long. So moving back, you have you see these 4 kind of areas here. These are the entryways for the 4 extra small hangars. When you go 1 level down, you have a main central corridor that runs the length of the ship. This is going to be a very long corridor, by the way. This corridor is going to be almost 120 meters long. So this hallway is going to be about as long as a carrack. So additional moves down. When you go down to this level here, there is a secondary corridor underneath the primary walking corridor that has an air car. That air car is supposed to be able to carry roughly 4 people, 12 SCU of cargo. That will run from all 4 of these extra small decks. It'll run all the way back to the main cargo area as a way to move cargo to and from. Underneath that, there's a 3rd corridor level that you can walk through. I do think there is space in this area for CIG to put additional rooms, okay? And I'm going to show you how they could do that here in a minute when we open up the 3D model, okay? Moving further back here to sort of the main area of the Kraken, obviously up top here we have the bridge, additional rooms back here that they just label as planning rooms and break rooms and crew rooms, captain's rooms, all that kind of stuff. Essentially, you can see this entire area possibly being reworked to better fit certain core rooms. I could see captain's room staying, planning room staying, all this mostly staying intact. I could see the break room and the crew room being slightly relocated, though. That is something that could happen, as I don't know if it needs to be up in this prime location of the bridge. It could be maybe a level lower. We'll have to see. Again, we have our manned rear top turret up here. There is the Dragonfly Bay, which actually occupies a rather large area of the Kraken's internals. That is one area that could change. We're going to talk a little bit about how and why shortly. We then have this big fuel tank reserve area here. It's where you see these 4 circles. Those are the giant tanks that hold the fuel for ships to repair, rearm, and refuel on the pads. Okay, so that's where that is pulling from, are those big tanks there. Some additional corridor space, again, here that CIG could refactor into additional rooms. Moving further back here, we get additional port and starboard side dual size 4 turrets, if I'm not mistaken. CIG will probably upgun those. A large engineering area back here. This whole area back here is engineering. And then the main cargo hold, which is pretty huge. There's sort of 2 cargo areas, though. There's a cargo 2, which is sort of the primary cargo area. That's where your bulk cargo is going to be. And then there's cargo 1, which is a lower level closer to the actual ground elevator. Okay. So what that technically means now, hey, it's Nonstop Bops. Hope you're doing well, Bops. Nice to see you. Hope you've been well. Appreciate you stopping by. Appreciate you stopping by, buddy. Hope you're doing good. So the side turrets are size 5. Okay, so those are dual size 5. Okay, I thought they were a size higher than 4s. So, and again, the reason, just so everyone knows, the reason I don't go too far into the size of weapons on concept ships is that they probably will change during development. They probably will change. So it's why I don't get too focused on turret sizes, component sizes, or performance metrics for the ships. Even when they come into the game at this stage, I just don't pay a lot of attention to them because they will definitely change by 1.0. I'm interested in them. I just don't get like obsessed with them. When 1.0 hits and we're supposed to be living in a balanced game world, I will pay a lot more attention to what the specific stats of those of certain components and weapons and all that DPS and all that stuff is for ships. But right now it's just a little too kind of all over the place. But the cargo 1 and cargo 2 area of the Kraken is directly related to how cargo is stored. And I can probably get to the image here. Where is it? Yep, right here. Can I look at this image? Nope. You can see right here, there's this top area up here, which is cargo 2. And then there's like a level down that's considered cargo 1. That's sort of like quick on and off cargo. And you can see there's a little opening right here. It's a little hard to see in this image, but there's a little opening right here that is the elevator that goes down to the ground level, to surface level. So you would put cargo that you want to get on and off the ship quickly into cargo level 2, or sorry, cargo level 1, this sort of lower area, and then cargo level 2, which you're not offloading as much and as quick, can go up in this bigger area of cargo level 2. Okay, so that's kind of how that works. Hopefully, I probably said that wrong. I didn't get much sleep last night, everybody. So that's currently how the cargo area works. I could see CIG putting a giant lift that goes from cargo 2 to cargo 1. As a matter of fact, that's what this could be. You see this different colored panel here? It's got the little warning lights on it. This could be a lift that goes from cargo 2 to cargo 1 and allows for easier offloading. Okay, but that's essentially how that cargo area works. Is there's sort of a 2-level thing going on there. Okay, so that is the Kraken. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to open up the ship in CG real quick here. So let me go ahead and do that. Bear with me, everybody. I am going to flip the hey, we got 59 over on Twitch. Really appreciate that, everybody. 198 watching on YouTube. Really coming out today. Appreciate it. Okay, let me switch over here and I'm going to kind of show you what we're looking at. Okay, let me get CG ready. Who's ready to go into 3D today? Hopefully it goes okay and doesn't crash. Yep, Project Gnome, it is Kraken Talk today. It is that good old Kraken Talk. Okay, where is my... Okay. There we go. We're going to switch over to 3D today. VMXEO already in 3D today. That's right. That is right, buddy. Hey, and Art's in chat. Everybody give Art a little salute. I'm going to be doing a special stream with Art next week. We're going to have a guest on the show as well. We're going to be talking about instancing in Star Citizen, how that affects both PvP orgs and PvE orgs. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of discussion there, and it's going to be a good show. That'll be next Tuesday. All right, Thorn. Good morning to you as well. Hello, everybody. Keeping it secret. Keep Keep it secret. I like that name. Everyone, please don't forget to follow the channel. I'm going to go ahead and blast these out. I don't do this a lot, but I'm going to do it now. Make sure to follow us on Twitter. That's where I post a lot of stuff. If you are creating a new account in Star Citizen, or if you have a friend that wants to start a new account, please use my referral code that just popped up. Please use that. I am trying to build up my referrals. That is something I'm trying to do. If I can get to 50, I'll put the Misk Raptor in Fleet Viewer. Cop1, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. And then obviously, if you want to donate to the work that I try to do over here at STARJUMP, feel free to donate to the Patreon. Unfortunately, I will probably pretty soon have to do a little bit of fundraising for myself, which I've never done. And I don't like to do, but it may be time for a new GPU. I've had a few issues with this one. So we'll get to that soon, but that may have to happen. So again, your support goes a long way. Appreciate you all. Let's go ahead and get into this. Now, what are we looking at? Well, obviously we're looking at the Kraken. Okay. Let me get a null in here. We're looking at the Drake Kraken here. Now I've got certain areas color coded. We'll talk about what those are here in a second. But this is currently the Kraken as it's seen in the cinematic. This is the cinematic model of the Drake Kraken. Okay. If anyone saw my video with Tristpone where we go over the Kraken, great video, had a great time doing that with him. This is the model that was used. Okay. There is no interior in this model for those that were curious. You can see I can go inside it and there's nothing in there. There's just like emptiness and walls and stuff. There's no like actual structure, unfortunately. So if I go in here, yeah, it's just big open areas. No real internals whatsoever. So, all right, what are we seeing here? Well, in red, I have labeled all the ingress and egress points of the ship. So we have the port airlock, we have the starboard airlock, we have a main door over here that leads from our big medium deck into the main tower of the Kraken. So we have that door. Underneath, we have the cargo elevator. Okay, for those of you wondering where that is. Up towards the nose of the Kraken, we have an airlock. I'm assuming there'll be an elevator there that comes down. I do think this will be redesigned a bit to be a little bigger, a little bit more substantial. So essentially people at the front of the ship can get out more easily there and don't have to go up through the cargo elevator and go all the way to the front of the ship. Okay. So we have the airlock on the bottom, the elevator on the bottom, the port and starboard airlocks on the docking collars here. We have the main elevator on the rear, or that goes from the main deck to the main tower. On the back of the ship, we have the Dragonfly Bay hangar opening, which I believe is right there. But that opens up and allows the Dragonflies to leave and enter into the Dragonfly Bay. On the other side of the ship, we have several more ingress and egress points, 4 that access the extra small pads. You can see those 4 entryways into the ship there. And then, of course, the 2 big internal hangars located on the starboard side of the ship. So what do you all get from that? There's a lot of entry points into this ship. A lot of places for people to breach on this ship. So let's count them up. We have 2 hangars, 1, 2. We have the small entries up here. So it's 2, 4, 5, 6 entries there. Port and starboard air, docking collars, that's 6, 7, 8. Airlock on the front, or sorry, elevator on the front here, that's 9. Door over here is 10. And if you count the Dragonfly Bay, that's 11. And if you count the elevator, that is 12. So that is 12 entry points on the Kraken right now. Think about that for a minute. What other ship do you know that has 12 planned entry points? So from a pure flow standpoint, you know, CIG, if you read back and you look at the work CIG is doing to the Ironclad, what is one of the things that stands out? one of the things that stands out is CIG was doing a lot of work to the internal flow of the ironclad. If you read through the monthly reports, you'll see that is something that they have been pretty actively working on. I can imagine that's going to be doubly difficult on the Kraken purely because of the amount of entry points the ship has, right? I think someone, a couple people mentioning in chat, you're going to need a lot of guards. I think so. I think you will need a lot of security on this ship. I think you will need a lot of security on this ship. And again, that's not to say that CIG couldn't even do a few more entry points. I could actually see an elevator put somewhere on the bottom that takes people directly up to the tower, the main tower, so that you don't have to come in through the freight elevator and then probably get on a secondary elevator to go all the way up to the bridge. We'll have to see how they do that, but yeah, it's just something to consider. Okay. What could they do? So what we're talking about here, what was the title of this show? The title is Kraken Changes. Okay. So we know the Kraken is sort of had to sort of go through a reconcepting phase. Now, that's sort of kind of what we're talking about today. And we're going to speculate wildly here. Okay. We're going to speculate wildly. I'm not saying CIG is going to do this or even considering anything like this, but we're going to take a look at the ship's possible changes purely based off where the game is at today, right? So let's start just interior for a minute, okay? I'm going to switch back over momentarily to our cross-section. From an interior perspective, there's still a lot CIG can do, okay? If you look through... sorry, just moving a few windows around. If you look through the actual space in the ship here, there is a lot of areas with gray here that CIG could fit rooms, okay? Even all the way up through here where CIG has some of these little habs, you have long stretches with no rooms, okay? There is space there to put rooms. So CIG could put medical wings down there, additional engineering cubby holes. They could put an armory down there, although I think the armory would be probably closer to the bottom here. But where I'm going is the Kraken does have a lot of room to play with internally. Okay, while I can't speculate too much on what they're going to add into the internals, I do think there's 3 solid bets on what's going in. The first one would be a medical wing. John Crew has said himself that the ship is going to get a medical room of some type. Okay. Oops, 1 second, everybody, grabbing something. So yeah, John Crew has said himself that the ship is going to get medical spaces. Okay, that's an easy one. Another area that's not outlined in this cross section is armory. The ship will definitely get an armory. As a matter of fact, this ship probably needs 2 to 3 armories. Okay, through 2 to 3 armories to protect the multitude of entryways into the ship. Okay, the ship will also probably get a brig of some type, and I think the brig will be somewhere up here in one of these causeways. And how I think the brig is going to work on this ship is I think this ship is going to be able to service bounty hunting ships. So you're going to be able to take your Hawk, your Zeus Mark, Marky Mark, any ship that does bounty hunting gameplay, you're going to be able to land it on the Kraken. You're going to be able to offload those bounty hunting pods, and this ship will have a place to store those. So I think a brig for people, but also that brig will double as a bounty hunting personnel pod storage area. And that is something I think will happen. So armory, brig, medical room, I think is a guarantee. Okay, a guarantee. Let's switch back over to 3D for a minute. So what could we add to a redone Kraken exterior? Okay, and so what could change here? Well, before we get to that, I'm going to focus on this gun right here. Okay, let me go to this gun real quick. A lot of people have asked me if the Kraken is going to get any sort of weapons kit like the Egress had. I think it's possible. I do think it's possible. How do I think that would work? Well, I think this gun up here, which is currently a dual size 8, gun. And I wouldn't pay too much attention to the weapon model you see on here. This is most likely just a placeholder, okay? But this weapon, I think will be essentially a weapon that can be switched in and out with a kit. I think there'll be the main dual size 8 turret. That could get up gun to size 9 even. There is a ship that has size 9 turrets in Star Citizen, by the way. It is the PU version of the Javelin. Okay, the PU version of the Javelin has a quad size 9 main turret, while the Squadron version of the Javelin, I believe, has a dual size 10 turret. So there's a slight difference there. Okay, but I think this turret could be switched out in the future with probably a big missile turret. Okay, think like something on the Asgard, but just way bigger, right? And I think that's kind of what you'll be able to switch out. So this will be, I think it'll be a bespoke turret in that you can't switch the guns out, but I think you're going to be able to switch the entire turret out. Okay, so you'll be able to go from probably ballistic energy, a ballistic weapon kit, energy weapon kit, and then ultimately a missile weapon kit. Okay, that's the other possibility. Now, someone has brought up torpedoes. Possibly, I'll be honest with you, though, I don't think they're going to bring torpedo capability to the Kraken. I don't think they're going to do that. They would have to add a substantial amount of geometry onto the front of the Kraken, not just for the torpedoes to launch from, but they also would need a magazine area for the torpedoes to be held, because most likely they would be size 10 torpedoes, loading mechanisms for those, a control station for those, all of that. So I think what we're going to see here is I think we're going to have a host of different types of turrets that can go on this front mount. Okay. That's what I think we're going to get there. Okay. This turret, by the way, is only really capable of being effective up front and off to the sides. If you turn all the way to the rear, you are blocked by the Kraken's main hull superstructure area. Okay. Okay. What else could we do with the Kraken? Well, we're going to get a little, who wants to get a little crazy, a little bit creative here? Who wants to get creative? I'll take it as all of you. All of you want to get massively creative on what we could do with the Kraken. Okay, before I show you, let me outline colors here so you know what we're looking at. We got blue for our windows. We got red for our egress and ingress points. We're going to keep that the same. And then the yellow will be just any area that I think that would be completely new. Okay. And I'm going to explain what I'm talking about here. So let's turn on my other model. Okay. So we've added some stuff here. Okay. We're going to go through what this is and why I added some of these things. Okay. Because I'm getting a little crazy here, a little crazy, but we're speculating. By the way, I'm not saying that CIG is doing any of this. I'm just speculating on what they could do to make this a little bit interesting. Okay. All right. Let's start first with our main deck. Okay. As a matter of fact, I'm going to turn a few things off here. Okay. We're going to turn a few things off. 1 second. Okay. We are going to need elevators to move cargo effectively on this ship. Remember how I talked about this ship, one of its, I think its biggest strengths, since carrying ships to A to B is not that big of a deal anymore. I think one of the biggest reasons for this ship existing is to act as a cargo way station. Okay, so a place where people can bring cargo from one ship, offload it, and bring it to another, or transfer it to another ship, or just offload the cargo so that they can continue on their way and grab more stuff or more resources or whatever. And the Kraken can act as a place to load up on those cargoes and cargo pods or cargo boxes or cargo or you know, resource bags or whatever. Load up on that inside its massive cargo wing, or cargo hold, excuse me, inside of its massive cargo hold, and then transfer that to other ships, right? So we need elevators built into the deck of the Kraken. So you see those here. Okay, if we have our 2 landing pads there for our 2 medium ships, I suggest CIG build 2 cargo elevators into the deck of the ship itself. Okay, so these are built right into the deck. Okay, these elevators could go down. Okay, so they would move down. They'd move cargo down. Okay, into essentially an area where then the cargo moves across and moves back. Okay, so you sort of see how that functionality there. There's a little bit of geometry there. Ignore that. Now, if CIG did that, they would need to build in a path for those elevators. So that takes us to the underside of the ship, and you'll see these yellow areas here that I added. It would require CIG to put in some geometry that allows our elevators, right, to go down. Of course, it would go down and go forward a little bit, and then slide over, and you can see these big areas here. Now, where would they go? Well, those elevators would go inside the main hull of the ship and then down to the air car, okay? So you would want these paths here to be able to move the cargo down to the air car level so that the air car could pick them up and move them to the back cargo hold, okay? Because remember, that air car travels through here, okay? It's, the air car is pretty much right in this area, right where I got the bottom of these yellow areas. The air car moves along there, and then the air car moves back to the main cargo area of the Kraken, which is right here. Okay, so you'd have 2 of those big service elevators, which would be kind of a different sort of elevator that needs to occur. But anyways, you could do something like that. I think it would be really cool. And then those would be your deck side elevators that would service those medium ships. Okay. Now, we're going to go a little bit crazier with cargo elevators here in a minute, but I did want to just point this out is to me, this change is more of a critical must-have change. CIG's got to figure out a way for ships on this main deck to move cargo down to the air car, at the very least. Now, we do have this door here, this rather large door, but we don't know if that's a door big enough for cargo or if it's going to be turned into a personnel door. We don't really know what's going on there, right? So yeah, we need a way to move the cargo from the deck to the actual air car. It would require some geometry changes underneath, but I don't think that would be an issue. These could be bigger, you know, these sort of these elevator sort of constructs here, machines, these elevators, complete with the actual elevator platform, plus all the parts and pieces underneath to move that platform internal of the ship. They may need to be bigger than this, whatever, to account for everything. But I think that is something that has to happen for the ship to be fun, to really get the full usage out of its main deck. Okay. So again, going back to that discussion on what is the Kraken going to actually be used for, if it's a way station for cargo, then I think this is, you know, what we're seeing here, this is important, critical. Okay. We talked about the modular gun here. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is let me turn this back on. We have on this side of the ship, actually, let me turn this off because we got a few things here that we're gonna get to this. We're gonna get to this. 1 second. Okay, so we have the 2 hangars under here. Now these are, oops, 1 second here. I have a slight chat issue. Stand by, everybody. I'm just getting my chat reactivated here. It froze. Bear with me. Okay, it should be working now. Okay, so we have these 2 hangars underneath here. So just so everyone knows, these are extra small hangars. They're meant to be for like a Buccaneer. If the question is, will it fit more? Probably, but we don't totally know the full size of these yet. What I can do real quick though is just turn these off so you can see inside. So there is kind of the little cubby hole for the for this, and then again it accesses the internal side of the ship for causeways and stuff. But there is the hangar. Okay, pretty big hangar door, but it's meant to fit something like a Buccaneer. Now, I thought to myself, if you look underneath the Kraken, you do have kind of this empty area here underneath these elevator constructs that I built. You have this area that really is kind of empty, right? And obviously the ship was designed that way. It was meant to be essentially a little bit asymmetric. But I did get to thinking, like, why couldn't we put one more hangar on this side? I know that is something that people have talked about before as well. So I'm not the only person to have thought of this. But we could do that. So putting that in, oh, that's the wrong one. Putting that in, we could take one hangar. Sorry, I'm navigating the 3D model. It's a little challenging. We could take the one hangar, bring forward a little bit of additional geometry here just to close it off. I did try to do two, and two does slide a little bit forward of the airlock and looked a little weird. But you could do this to essentially add a third internal hangar. It would still keep it isometric. It would still keep the general look and feel of the Kraken that CIG did, but it would give you that little bit of additional storage for another ship, especially since you're already kind of doing work on this side for those elevators. It's like, why not? Since you're over there, why not work on it? Now, let me give you the bad news on this idea. I did specifically ask, actually, let me get a mesh, access center, execute. Okay. I did specifically ask Gavin Rothery if there was room to do this. If there was room to take either one or even two hangars from the starboard side of the ship and mirror those on the port side of the ship. Now, of course, they could make it happen. They could change the ship in ways to accommodate that. But Gavin's response was there isn't enough room. The reason I think he said that primarily has to do with this internal causeway here, this sort of internal main superstructure of the ship, right? I think that while these hangars do connect to it, I think the idea is you have walkways here, engineering paths, other tramways, especially along this wall that are critical that maybe we can't see in the cross section. And by putting this here would sort of take that away. Now, that's the only thing I could come up with on why that wouldn't be feasible. But I think adding a third hangar there really just increases the again, if this ship's primary role is going to be a support carrier, a way station for ships to come and go, then I think adding one more internal hangar is really just a plus. Now, again, the ship has plenty of landing spaces. Okay, we have the two mediums here, 4 extra small. We have the 2 internal hangars on this side, but that third could give us just, again, a little bit more carry capability and really set the Kraken aside from ships like the Egress and stuff like that, and really make this a carrier, right? So I don't know. This one isn't as critical as the elevators, but I think it could be really, really cool to be able to take one more ship on that side and it not overly change the look and feel of the Kraken. Okay, it still sort of looks like our ship, right? Stunder says, when will CIG hire you? I don't know. I'm waiting on the call. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I got a good job now, so I'm very lucky. But it would be cool to work on spaceships, I won't lie. But then I wouldn't get to talk to you all about spaceships, and that would be sad. So that is another idea, okay? The third sort of hangar underneath on the starboard side. Now, again, you may ask, well, couldn't there be 2 underneath there? Well, if I put 2, to be able to give both hangars enough room, this one starts to poke out on this side. I don't think that's necessarily a deal breaker, but it does start to look a little awkward. It does start to look a little awkward. Now, if you push this one back to where it's equal with the other one, to where it's like that, this hangar starts to eat into the main cargo area, because this is part of the cargo area. This hangar starts to eat into the cargo area. So to prevent the hangars from eating into the cargo area, you really need to be forward this piece here, okay? Because cargo starts here. By doing that, it pushes these two hangars forward in kind of a strange way. I don't think it still hurts the Kraken too much, but it does sort of make it a little boxy and a little weird. So I think you could add one hangar though, and you're doing just fine. I think it doesn't take away from the ship at all. It does add an entry point though, right? Actually, so do these two freight elevators too. Excuse me, let me learn how to talk. These two freight elevators also add additional entry points on top of the 12 that we already have, right? Which is a lot. All right, now we're gonna get a little crazy. One other place on the Kraken that I looked at and I was like, you know, this is an area something could be done with, is right over here. We have kind of this area of the ship that's a little bit of no man's land. They could do a number of things over here. They could build out an area of additional superstructure of the tower if they wanted. So for example, I'm just for lack of a better way of doing it right now, I'm just going to bring in a box. We'll make it yellow here. Because remember, the yellow is our new additions. They could build out an area that again, I'm just going to do this quick and dirty, everybody. Quick and dirty. Right, they could do something where I'm not suggesting this, by the way. I'm just showing you how much space there is here. CIG could add entire sections of the bridge that increase the internal space by quite a bit, right? They could do something like that. I'm not suggesting they do that. I'm not saying it's likely or anything like that. I'm just saying that there's space there where CIG could sort of fill that out with additional structure to vastly increase the interior size of the main tower, right? They could do something like that, okay? Another thing they could do, though, is you have kind of a nice flat area here, and I thought, you know, it could be nice to add an area for additional ships to come and land, specifically to get on and off the bridge quickly, right? So I threw this on here. This is a little bit of a mess, but you could add another landing pad back here. Okay, you'd have to kind of fit it in here, along with an egress or an ingress point here into the main tower. Okay, but it could be a way to land something like a cutter or something, or you know, a small ship, extra small ship. You could land it here and quickly go in. You're right into the tower. Quick visits if you need to switch out some personnel or something. And again, I don't think it takes away overall. Now that's a bigger change, I know, but doesn't take away overall from the ship's look too much, right? It is a change. It's a pretty big change. But I think, again, the Kraken mostly maintains what it is. Now, again, I think this back platform over here and this extra internal hangar here, these are 100% like, oh, that would be cool to have. But we definitely don't need them. That is not like required. We don't absolutely need them. Obviously, I think the freight elevators are a much more critical thing. But, you know, when you're talking about a ship this big, how much function it has, being able to truly turn the ship into a fortress, a way station, a space station, however you want to refer to it, by giving it maximum landing spots, which it already has a lot, do not get me wrong, but adding some additional ones, and then on top of that, figuring out smart ways to move the cargo from the decks into the ship. Now, on these extra small pads here, I don't necessarily know if these need cargo elevators. I think these could just literally be for repair, rearm, refuel, okay, that happen on the deck. And then you have the entry point here. I don't necessarily think those need those same freight elevators. I think that could be primarily limited to the medium primary pads, okay? Now, one more thing that could possibly happen that I think CIG, it would be cool for them to consider it. It'd be cool for them to consider it. Is, you know, those, they're going to be in Nix. They're the external freight elevators, the ones that are like flat, but like flat on. That way you can add cargo and they bring the cargo inside for like space stations and stuff like that. I think if you did something like that, you could almost do small versions of it. So for example, this area in here is the main cargo area, right? So imagine if you had smaller versions of the ones on the Nix or on, what's it called, Levski. Levski has these exact elevators, by the way. They're these like vertical elevators. They sit on the sides of things and you put cargo on them. If you remove some of this geometry here and you added a way for there to be those horizontal freight elevators so that big ships like the Hull C and stuff could fly alongside, throw a couple 32 SCU cargo boxes on here, this elevator, these doors somehow open here, bring the elevator inside directly into the main cargo bay. Right now, we've only seen those type of cargo elevators on space stations, but it does make you wonder if we're going to get them on ships at some point, right? It just makes you wonder. So that was kind of my ideas for the Kraken and changes that could occur that wouldn't adversely affect the ship. They would increase the mass. I think we need to point that out. They would increase the mass quite a bit. But to me, they further extend this ship's capabilities beyond that of just a carrier. As a matter of fact, if you're thinking purely carrier, then honestly, the best carrier is probably going to be something like the Hull C, or sorry, the Hull C, Hull D, or Hull E, where you're going to be able to put ships on the cargo grids, right? I mean, in the future, with how CIG is building out the systems, I think that could be just as viable as a Kraken from a purely ship carrying capability, right? Just purely from carrying ships from A to B, I think that could totally be enough, right? So for me, the Kraken, I really hope CIG is looking at the Kraken from a, how do we make this ship plug into the current gameplay and what the ship will primarily be used for? Because let's be honest, this ship is going to be primarily used for two things: servicing combat operations and servicing industrial operations, right? And I agree with you, Fishbowl. Carrier doesn't just mean moving ships from A to B, but I think originally one of the things that was talked about with the Kraken is that it had extreme long range. I think those were the exact words, but used by CIG, extreme long range, right? And that extreme long range was, I think, supposed to be able to get ships from A to B that couldn't travel the distance, because there was going to be certain systems like Pyro and others that did not have the refuel, repair, and rearm services available at stations throughout the system. Now we are seeing that. So that original extreme long range functionality of the Kraken is not necessarily required. So I agree with you. This ship is supposed to be able to support the air wing that's on it. And again, I think ways of supporting that air wing better, or that industrial operation or whatever you're doing, really means having a robust way to move cargo to and from the internal cargo hold of this ship. Again, acting as more of a way station, acting as like a truck stop, again, which was something else discussed by CIG at one point. This was sort of like a truck stop in space. And being able to support those repair, rearm, refuel capabilities. I'm going to hit a few questions here. I did have some come in and I pulled aside. Whereas 1081 says, do you think there will be hydraulic landing gears in game to assist in better landing on rough terrain? I hope so. I think that there will actually be some tech brought into the game at some point. They mentioned this a long time ago. This was 3-4 years ago. It went off the progress tracker, but they were working on some tech that would align ramps and elevators to surface depending on how high the ship was. and uneven terrain. I think CIG in the future is going to refine the landing experience so that when ships do land, they are able to sort of like self-level in a sense, almost able to self-level on uneven terrain. That's sort of what I think will happen. Let's see here. Avatar, let's see here. Frostwire says, question, do you think the Kraken could be a viable fleet operations center, hollow table included? If so, do you think the Kraken will have an edge over competitors such as Aegis or Anvil? Well, I do. I think so especially for fleet operations, for industrial operations. Yeah, and I'll go back to this cross-section real quick. Going back to the cross-section, you'll see a room right here called planning room. You can expect a big hollow table there, hollow globe. And then that room, that planning room, is going to be a big part of planning operations, whether it's a big mining operation, salvage operation, what have you. Even if you're doing big base building operation out here and you got a Pioneer building the base, you may have a Kraken in orbit above that Pioneer, servicing smaller ships, bringing stuff to the base, right? If you're building a space station, while that space station is under construction, I could totally, and you got your supply hub out there and ships are bringing cargo to the supply hub, I could 100% see a Kraken being parked out there too, with small fighters that are sort of protecting the construction ships and the operations going on there. I could absolutely see that. Okay. Novert says, do you think they will make the privateer a module after the rework? Yes. Well, not a module. I still think it's going to be I think it's going to be a kit, but it's still going to be a kit that has to be a rework or sorry, a whole rework or refit. Refit's about the better word, right? Yeah, it'd be a whole refit. And I do think there's going to be a time that takes to apply in the future. So I think if you have a Kraken and you have a privateer kit, I think you will be able to retrofit it to the kit and back to the base Kraken. I just think there's going to be a countdown timer for that. So it might take 2 days, might take 3 days, etc. Genetonic says, question, would you trade some cargo capacity for increased refueling capacity? That's a good question, Genetonic. I think it's going to have enough refueling capacity to deal with those 4 large tanks to be able to deal with anything. I have a feeling you're going to be able to put big cargo containers, though, inside the cargo hold, and you're going to be able to pull from that cargo grid as well for refueling. So I think you're going to be able to manually make that change just through the type of cargo you put into the cargo hold. Because again, I do think we're getting big fuel tanks as, cargo that we can load into the cargo decks. Hey, it's Admiral Kusanagi. Hope you're doing well, Kusanagi. Dillman says, what variants of the Kraken would you like to see, if any? Let me see if I have this up. I don't think I do. Let me look. One second. I had something I wanted to look at. I don't know if I have it available, though. And sorry if you hear any engines or mowers outside. Do I have it? Bear with me, everybody. Bear with me. I'm looking for a CG model that I don't think I have available that I built out one time. Yeah, I don't have it. Where I was going with that, though, is that I think one of the roles that the Kraken could really do well would be a hospital ship. Something to I think it would actually be a better solution than the Endeavor Hope class medical, hospital ship. If the Kraken was converted to a medical ship where the cargo hold was essentially a vast medical hospital wing, and you could land medical ships on the decks, bring those patients inside quickly and get them to the hospital, that to me is a much better use of the space than the Endeavor's Hope class configuration. So Simon Wolf says, so I think a hospital ship, to answer your question. Simon Wolf says, have you thought about in some way providing guidance as to best practices for commanding a ship like the Kraken or even a task force? So in my Shipyard video, I do talk about that. I am looking forward when the Kraken gets closer to release and we see what all capabilities it has. I would love to bring on some orgs to discuss that and figure out where the Kraken fits within their fleet operations and all that kind of good stuff. I mean, ultimately, I do think the Kraken is a ship that needs to stay in the rear. I think you need to have your Javelins, your gunships, your Perseus, your Polaris, your Idrises up front, while the Kraken stays in the back. I mean, I primarily look at the Kraken as a support ship, right? It is a support ship, right? You want your fighters to lead the Kraken, go out to the front, do their battles. They get damaged, they run out of ammo, they're low on fuel. They need to then fly back to the rear where they're safe, land on the Kraken, get re-topped up, go back out and do the fight. That's how the Kraken can be most effective. Okay. 3D Imagination 23 says, how can the Kraken avoid being boarded and having the ship stolen if it has pads where enemies can easily land? So you bring up a good question, 3D, and let me go into that for a minute, because we all know, Chief Tygon, greetings, Graham. Are you excited about drone gameplay? I am. I do think the Kraken could get some level of drone support, but more on that in a minute. When we think about the Kraken, I think we need to, it really does have a problematic place, right? And that is the ability with the open decks, which is its biggest advantage. And I'm actually going to go back to my unaltered Kraken here for a minute. With our Kraken, obviously one of the big problematic places or parts of the ship is its open deck concept. Okay, it's one of its advantages, it's one of its disadvantages, but that means enemy ships can just come, land on the deck, get out, try to board you, all that. What I think is going to be critical about the Kraken is resource management and engineering gameplay. Okay, so the first thing is resource management. If you go back and watch some of the earlier resource videos with CIG, a lot of stuff that's been tested out in Evo is being brought over. You know, it will play a role here in terms of, fire suppression, life support, all that. But one of the things not in the current build of engineering that is critical is gravity control. And this was showed to us in a previous video on engineering and on resource management. Gravity control. So the way to think about these 5 decks here, the one big one and the 4 small ones, the way to think about these is that they're large grav decks. Okay, they're probably going to have some level of gravity control on them, right? And the idea will be in resource management that I think it's going to happen, is that you're going to be able to turn off the gravity to these decks. What I'm hoping though is that for ships that are already landed on there, I'm hoping you can grav lock existing ships on the deck, but then shut off the deck's gravity for anything else coming and trying to land. You know what I mean? That's what I'm hoping happens. Okay. That would make the most sense. And again, it's another reason why you would not have the Kraken up on the front lines. You're going to have the Kraken more in the rear. You don't want to present those opportunities for the Kraken to be landed on when you're trying to service fleet operations. You don't want to be turning the gravity on and off, right? But that's how I think it's going to happen. I think there's got to be some level of gravity control to the deck. CIG has already showed us that, so I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Frostwire says, do you think the geometry on the front of the ship reflects the capability to scoop hydrogen fuel? You're talking about the big vents here in the front? No, I don't. They haven't ever mentioned anything like that. I think it's just rule of cool. Actually, what I think is this part here was part of the original Kraken concept work, which I could probably pull up real quick here. Let me bring it up. Let me go to the Kraken. Yeah, if you look at some of the original Kraken concept work, here's a good one. You see these front pieces here, right here? If you just flip those over 180 degrees, like literally just take one of these and rotate it, like flip it over, you kind of get the front of the Kraken, because that's what this is. Like imagine if I flip this over, that's kind of what we were looking at there, right? Just put the turret here. That's kind of what they added this vent thing here. I just think they added that vent thing to pull it away from what it originally was, which was just part of the Kraken early concepts, where it looked much different. It didn't look like an aircraft carrier. What else do we have here? Let's talk about PDCs real quick, because one of the big things that people talk about is, well, we do have some level of deck control because we have this turret here, and this turret here could, you know, spin around and shoot ships that are on the deck without authorization, right? That's possible. That could happen. But I think from a PDC standpoint, I think the Kraken is going to be pretty laden with PDCs as well. I think the idea will be that you don't let a ship get close enough to land on your deck, right? And remember, so, and we could do this real quick here. We'll add a little square in here. Let's just pretend this square is a PDC. You could easily put PDCs on, you know, the docking collar wings here. You could easily put PDCs there. You could have PDCs along this central spine. You could have mounted. Again, they could protect the main deck. You could probably have, you could probably have two of those sitting right here, right? You could probably have two PDCs right there. So again, very quickly, you can get up enough armament to protect the ship, I think. What's the nose gun right now? So this nose gun here is a dual size 8 currently. And this one here is a dual size 6. Now here's the thing. If some of you are saying, oh, well, there's still many ways to board the ship. Absolutely. There's a ton of ways to board this ship. It's actually one of the ship's biggest issues is how many ingress points it has. It has a ton of opportunity and area to get in there and board the ship, right? A ton of areas. One area we didn't talk about though too much was the I'm going to turn this back on, is the Dragonfly Bay. Now, obviously, the Dragonfly Bay there's a lot of controversy there. The idea is that there's an elevator here connected with this door. This door opens. The dragonflies are able to go in and out, do their business, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of people have asked me, like, what if they converted that to a cutter hangar? There is a little bit of a problem with that. I will show you right now. It primarily has to do with the cutter's size. Okay, so let me bring this up. So here's a cutter. This is to scale. So you can see the cutter is definitely a little bigger than that door, right? It's not to say you couldn't have a landing pad back here for a cutter to land on, and maybe an airlock door back here that the cutter, you know, you could go out of the cutter and right into the deck of the ship. That's something that could happen. It's a little bit of a dangerous area because we have a turret up there. I think CIG would make a new snub craft. I agree with you, VM. I do agree with you on that, yeah. By the way, we got a great crowd today. Really appreciate all of you. 84 over on Twitch and 237 on YouTube. Unreal. Unreal, everybody. I do want to remind everyone, the show's not over yet. I do want to remind everyone, though, that Thursday, I have an episode that is all about the lost concepts of Star Citizen. So we're going to show a bunch of old concepts that are really, really, really cool. You don't want to miss that. That'll be Thursday night, I believe at 6 p.m. Thursday night at 6 p.m. VMXEO, if you like talking early concept illustrations, feel free to join me on voice for that one if you want, or video, whatever you want to do. But we're going to go through a lot of Star Citizen's lost concepts. It's going to be a really fun episode. I pulled a lot of the old concept artwork. I just forgot how much cool shit there is there. There's some really cool ideas that I hope CIG revisits in the future, but there's also some cool ideas that hint towards ships CIG might be currently working on. You can actually tell where they've taken one thing and apply, like from one old concept and applied it to another. Okay, especially origin ships. There's some really cool origin stuff and some really cool MISC stuff we're going to go through. The image you're seeing here on screen right now was one of the original concept images for the Crusader Hercules. Okay, really, really cool idea for the Hercules. I still think CIG should do this ship somehow. But anyways, we're going to talk about that. But anyways, going back to this, yeah, I mean, you could, in theory, you could add, let's say if you weren't concerned about the Dragonfly Bay being back there in any way, you could do something where you put a deck up here. So let's say the Dragonfly Bay in general was just converted to more rooms inside for more stuff. And you were like, okay, we're going to do a landing pad here, right, that you can land a cutter on. I still think CIG would be concerned about that, though, because they do like pads to be of a certain size. So let's say you had a pad tucked back here, though. Right? And then they had an entryway here with an airlock door and essentially a bridge that just sort of took you all the way into that airlock door, something that kind of went like this. But obviously, take this little red part away and put a big airlock here to go into. Could they do something like that? Sure. I think it starts getting a little awkward though, because one, you're trying to land back here where the main thrusters are. You got a big turret over here protecting things. It's a sort of a dangerous area to land. And then you just start getting to that place where you're just like, oh my God, I got so many landing pads on this thing. Where are ships coming and going from? So I still think the Dragonfly Bay has some interesting use cases. What I think CIG needs to do, though, is just come up with a new snub ship that's really small that can go back there. That's what I think. Any more questions about the Drake Kraken? Doge Games, thank you. Dodge Games. I just said Doge Games. Dodge Games, thank you for the follow. Oh, boy. Scott Spangler says, not sure if I missed it. Do you think ships on the pads will be locked for the Kraken owner bed logs, or will they all disappear? So the way CIG originally described that functionality was that when the owner of the Kraken logs off and the Kraken's just in space, if there's players aboard the Kraken, meaning they've landed their ships on the deck or the players are on the Kraken itself, then the Kraken will stay. If no players are on the Kraken, then it will despawn. If you land your ship on the Kraken's decks and you log off, and then the owner of the Kraken log off, then the Kraken will disappear, go back into storage, and your ship will go back into your storage. That's the way I understand it. That's the way I understand that. Let's see here. What other questions do we have? What other questions do we have? Cosmic Turtle, if you just came in, you missed most of the stream, but that's okay. This will be a VOD. This will be a VOD. What other questions do we have regarding the Kraken?
Nothing.
Let me know. Question. You think the Privateer will release the same time as the normal Kraken? That's a great question. I don't know. I think it all depends on when they can get that marketplace gameplay going. We do know that the BMM is something they're possibly thinking about putting back into production end of next year. So that would mean a year and a half of development for that, maybe 2 years. That means that marketplace gameplay could be like 3 years away. What I think they would do is they would get the privateer mostly built, but then they would put a pin in it until the BMM catches up. And then when marketplace gameplay comes out, they'd have both of those big ships sort of ready to go. So I think the base Kraken will come first, is what I'm thinking. Fronasher says, question, when do you think they will talk about the changes to the Kraken done in reconcept phase? I hope at IAE. I hope we get a little bit of a sneak peek at IAE about what they've done to the Kraken. Usually during IAE, because the IAE is very ship focused, usually CIG will do a few episodes related to ships. Now, in years past, they've done them where they go deep into ships and have full talks with John Crew and Ben Curtis. And then there's been other years where they do these like short vignette videos where they kind of try to have fun with it, where you don't get a lot of info. I think one year they did these like quick 10 questions with John Crew and Ben Curtis where we actually got some nice answers, but there were these quick 10 question moments. I hope this year they kind of go in depth on some of the ships in development. Pioneer, Ironclad, Kraken. I hope we hear about all three of those. Galloway says standard or privateer. Which one are you running? I currently have a standard Kraken, standard one. I just like the flexibility of it. I really like the flexibility of the standard Kraken. Kusanagi says, do you see a 10 to 20% increase in size, and how would that look? So personally, I don't see an increase in size coming. I think the ship is plenty big. If it gets any bigger, it's really not going to fit in an extra large hangar anymore. I think they could make it maybe 15 meters longer, 20 meters longer at most, and it could still fit in the extra large capital hangars, but then only just barely. So they have to keep those hangars in mind. So I don't think it's going to grow all that much, maybe 5, 10, 15 meters though. Frostwire says, question, do you think they'll have some sort of way to recall ships other than spawning? Seems to break immersion. Well, you're not going to be able to spawn ships on the Kraken. You'll only be able to bring them up, hopefully, via the ASOP terminal in your hangar. You'll be able to bring the Kraken up with ships on the deck. Now, the despawning, when no players are on the Kraken, what CIG may do is make it despawn when no one is on the ship and maybe no one's in the viz area or in the area of the ship. They despawn it so no one actually sees it. Sometimes they've got to do some gamification to sort of make things work. You know what I mean? Arbiter of Mankind says, question, do you think this would be another size increase? Do I think this ship would increase in size? Just answered that. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's pretty big already. 3D Imagination says, question, will the pads have armor to prevent bullets from penetrating into the interior of the ship? I think they'll have some level of armor or durability just built into the nature of them. But I don't know if they'll have any more than the hull of the ship would. Hincorp Design Studio says, question, how big are the pads supposed to be? Small or Cutlass size or bigger? So the way it's currently designed, and I'm actually going to open up a different model here. Stand by. Actually, you know what? I can swing over. Let me bring up, I bring up something real quick. So on the Kraken, what you're seeing here are two medium pads. That's why these are squared off. These are two medium pads built around the Cutlass. They're really meant to be for Cutlasses. A lot of people think that just any medium ship should be able to land there. That would kind of be impossible for CIG to plan for. This ship is really built around the Cutlass. Okay, so those sort of fit the Cutlass. And then these pads over here are really meant for like the Buccaneer, the Vulture, the Herald, stuff like that. You can fit those ships on. Okay, you can also fit a Vulture on these medium pads. Now, of course, you are going to be able to fit large ships on here as long as the landing gear configuration allows it to be landed on the main pads. Okay, it just sort of depends. We may see a change to that, though. Demonic Yo says, question, is the Kraken Is the Kraken dead if they announce the RSI carrier Bengal variant? No, primarily because I think the Kraken is a nice size at 270 meters. The Bengal variant would be somewhere around 800 to 900 meters. You're talking a much bigger crew, a much bigger uplift. Again, in this game, bigger isn't always better. It really depends on the crew you're running with, the size of operation you're working with. They're kind of all part of the same question that you have to consider. So I don't know. I don't think it'll be dead. I think it'll just be perfect for a certain size and crew amount. Arbiter says, question, you don't think they will do the same thing with the Javelin with this ship if they do a size increase? I mean, maybe, but the Javelin doesn't have to land into a hangar. So I think that they were able to be a little bit freer with the Javelin size increase. Eve Inspiration says, are they considering a module of some kind, for example, a refinery or drone hub that would enhance its support options? So not currently, right? Not currently, but when we're talking about kits and ways of further monetizing the Kraken when it eventually goes flight ready, some modules for its main cargo area would be really smart. And we may see that CIG announces something like that. That would be a big departure, but I think it would make a lot of people happy. Take a few more questions here. Two things I need badly. That Kraken Captain mug. Yep, I'm working on that. I'm getting the Kraken Captain mugs up on the store. Don't worry. The new store will be launching soon. Kyle Timmons says, question, do you think a connection for Ironclad Caterpillar command modules to dock would be a good addition? I do. I don't know if they're going to do that, but they could easily add an airlock to the other side of the Kraken's main deck, the starboard side, and it would make a good place for a command module to dock. That probably should have been something I included in this episode, but that's a good idea. All right, one more question here, everybody, or maybe two more. Do you think CIG will integrate the command module? Yep, just said so. I hope so. I don't know if they will, but I hope so. Chief Tygon says, question, is there room in SC medical gameplay for medevac, hover bikes, gunner stretchers? If drones aren't the best operation, send in manned small evac vehicles. I think you're just asking if there's other room for other medical type ground vehicles like the hover bikes and stuff. And I guess my answer to that would be, yeah, absolutely, for sure. I don't see that being an issue. It just requires them to do it. I am going to switch over real quick here. One last thing before we leave for today. I'm going to open up something here. We're talking about those additions, right? We're talking about those additions. Bear with me. This is a heavy model. We're going to grab our command module. And essentially what I see that looking like, what I see something like that looking like is something like, we'll see the command module docks on the left side, so it would need to be something over here. It does make me wonder if they could add some sort of place to dock. It'd have to have some sort of docking collar or something, but some place to sort of dock a command module over in this area, and then do access to the rest of the Kraken. So could they do that? Yes, they could do that. Will they do that? I am not sure. I think it would be a nice feature to have, though. Yeah, I think it'd be a nice feature to have. All right, everybody. That's about it for today. I do know who I'm going to raid, though. I'm going to send you over to actually a big streamer, but he's awesome. Been very nice to me. I do appreciate him. I hope all of you will give him some STARJUMP love, please, when you go over there. Absolutely incredible turnout today on both YouTube and Twitch. I greatly appreciate that. On the Twitch side of things today, though, we are going to raid someone who, again, awesome person. Do I have them on my list? Are they not live anymore? Stand by. Stand by. Nope, they're not live anymore. I got to find a new person. We're going to raid. Oh, you know who? I know who we'll raid. We're going to raid Segelian. Please stick around. Give Seg a little bit of that STARJUMP love. Everyone, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Make sure to join me on Thursday at 6 p.m. Hopefully VMXEO will join me, maybe some other people. Join us where we go through Lost Star Citizen concepts, okay? For everyone else, I appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out today. I'm going to go ahead and start that raid. Make sure you give Segelian some love. I will do a giveaway on Thursday with the concept show. We are going to do another giveaway, so stay tuned for that. And everyone, have a great rest of your day. Salute to you. I love you all. Thanks for putting up with me.